Welcome to the podcast, Celebrating Differences. I'm your host, Preston, or Tyree. And today, on episode 103, we have the amazing Heidi Beierle. And she, at age 35, through various circumstances, decided to ride her bike across the country by herself. And it wasn't a high-end bike, but she got on it and she rode, and she averaged about 50 miles a day. So think about that. Starting on the West Coast, going all the way across the country, across the Continental Divide, across the Great Plains, through the Appalachians, and to end up in Washington, D.C. at a conference. It wasn't the easy way to get there, but she talks about slow travel, and you need to read the book. But let's talk to Heidi Beierle about her trip across America.
Thanks so much for having me, Preston.
Yeah, welcome to the podcast. I'm glad we finally got together. You've been traveling a lot. I was looking at your map, and you've just been all over the country and finally ended up in Austin, Texas. Wow.
Yeah, this is sort of the culmination of about 6 months of traveling around the country, and okay. I'm delighted to be in Austin and have the opportunity to talk to you.
Well, folks, Heidi wrote this book, and we'll talk about her book some, but I really want to talk about Heidi most of the time, because that's what this podcast is all about, is celebrating differences. What's different about Heidi that she celebrates, and what's different about Heidi that we can celebrate, and the impact it's having on people in the world. And so let's start off with your book. You did this book how long ago?
Well, I pedaled solo across the country in 2010.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it took 14 years for the story to get out into the world, and I was doing a research project on bicycle tourism and rural economic development along historic roads, and I had a profoundly transformational personal experience while I was out there. And after I'd written up my research results, I felt like I still had a story that needed to be told that I wanted to put in book form. So it did take a little while for it to come out, but here it is.
Okay. Tell me about research project I heard in there. What were you doing that you were doing a research project that involved riding across America?
Well, the research project probably did not require me to ride across America. That was just like the personal thing coming through. So the context for how all of this came together was that I had been feeling depressed and lonely and underemployed, and it was the 2008 recession, and I thought that I'd like to have a job as an active transportation planner, and those jobs required a degree that I did not have. So I thought, while the economy was in the toilet, maybe I could go back to school, get the relevant degree, and when I got out, everything would be well, and I could get a job. And so I went to school. I was 35 in late 2009. I was 35. I was 34 in late 2009 when I started school. And, I had a life outside of school with a bunch of friends. And, my friends were part of what was helping me feel better. And during school, with its deadlines and everything else, I just could not make the time to see my friends anymore. I wasn't really that excited about my coursework, and I was beginning to think that I had made the worst mistake of my life by going back to school. So at the end of the first term in December of 2009, I was thinking, can I just ride my bike? Like, could life just deliver me this beautiful thing that is simple and easy and feels good? And the universe heard me and sent a message via my mom an email So my mom sent me this email about a Preserving Historic Road conference in Washington, D.C., and that would be um, in September of 2010, so almost a year into the future. And her email was pretty short. Would you be interested in going to this conference? We could go hang out with your uncle in Washington, D.C. And that was it. I was like, not really. No,
Yeah.
that does that doesn't sound like being on my bike all summer, which is what I want to do. And then I had this thought. I was like, oh, well, I could pedal out there and then I would be on my bike all summer and that would work out. So I just wrote this flip email back to her and I was like, sure, I'll ride out there and meet you. And so then, that's how it happened. I was like, this is a really great idea. I started to build a research project around this idea that I wanted to pedal across the country. And what was I going to study while I was doing that? So
Well, and you actually did research,
I actually
talking
did.
talking to the people in the communities about the impact of cycle tourism.
I did indeed. And we also talked about other things too, because I met many people just, randomly when I stopped places and while I was doing homestays. And I was really interested and curious about what they liked about where they lived, and just being really, really interested in who are these people who I've landed with, who are taking care of me. Yeah, it was beautiful.
And it sounds like in the book you found a lot of good people coming across the country.
Absolutely.
I
I
think,
had
Heidi, that's because you look for good people.
uh, maybe,
Yeah.
there's definitely something to, having a vibe, but I didn't know who I was looking for. I
Okay.
was just out trying to find myself.
Yeah, you're looking for yourself and found all these
Yeah.
other interesting people. Yeah. Talk to me about slow travel. That's Now you're talking my language. I've been bicycling for over 70 years now, and I've bicycled on 6 continents, 26 countries, 31 states, and it finally gotten into the community where I put more miles on my bike than I put on my car.
Beautiful. That's so beautiful. Well, those are those are those are amazing statistics. More than I can say I've done biking for sure. So,
It's all serendipity. It's better to be lucky than good.
yeah, cool. Well, slow travel is not just about biking, but certainly biking is a really beautiful way to be a slow traveler. So, I have three three basic um, principles that help people make slow travel their own. And slow travel is really something anybody can do anywhere for any length of time. And it's all relative too, like this idea of slowness. Because what's slow for one person is not necessarily slow for another one. So the first principle is micro travel and mindfulness, and this is the idea that you can um, do something as simple as go outside and experience the weather and notice what you notice. It could be a walk in the neighborhood or a day bike ride or whatever it happens to be. And the emphasis is really on not being distracted, like not listening to a podcast or radio or other thing while you're out slow traveling, but you're really paying attention to where you are in the moment. You're noticing what you notice, and without judgment, and you're just really engaging your senses. I like to encourage people to engage senses they don't necessarily think about, like the sense of smell or what they hear, but the idea that any any sensory input is a good way to um, pick up the richness of the environment and just be present in the moment. The second principle is like biking across the country or just biking about 31 states, 6 continents, whatever it happens to be. The journey is the destination, where you might have a destination in mind, but where you or like the act of travel is really what is most important, that you're having an experience while you're moving from one place to another. And what are you noticing about that? And this is also, I think, the place where a lot of the climate friendly travel could come in, where you might be choosing a slower travel mode because you know you know you want you want to be kind to the planet at the same time while you're out enjoying um, where you happen to be. And the third principle is like live somewhere else for a while. So the idea
Okay.
that the destination could be important. You don't want to spend all your time getting somewhere because when you're there, you really just want to sink in to this place where you are, absorb the local culture, the food, the language, get recommendations from the local people. And this this one is also sort of bucking the current trend of travel where it's about being less programmed, having fewer items on the agenda, loose
Uh,
plans, minimal plans, no plans. Like, challenge yourself to be bored in a place if you want, but really just this idea of white space and the adventure that comes from uh, being somewhere. It could be familiar, but you're just spending time being very, very present with your experience in this other place.
so you've got a website or a Facebook page called The Wonder of Slow Travel. You've
Hmm.
got 187 members on board, and it's I've been watching some of it. It looks like a lot of fun. People are really just touching base, and the you know, my wife has a sign that says "Trust the process," and I like that because to me that's the journey.
Hmm.
You know, it,
Yes.
it's not that end place. It's not all that kind of stuff. It's how I got there, and it's yeah, slow travel.
Absolutely. Yes, and I do encourage people to check out what's happening at the Wonder of Slow Travel. It's really designed to be a place for people to share their slow travel journeys, to ask questions if they have questions about slow travel, and you know, it goes through cycles of people have different levels of like engagement at
Hmm.
different points in time. So a lot of a lot of what's been on there recently is me posting different slow travel moments from my journey being out on book tour. But there's I definitely invite other people to
Yeah.
to share their adventures there too,
Well, I
introduce
posted on there
themselves.
this afternoon that you and I are going to be doing this talk, and I'll put links up on
Beautiful.
that Facebook page. I love it. I
Thank you.
love the picture of you lying there wide-eyed with this big leaf with holes in it. Where did those holes come from? You know.
Yes. Yeah. That's that picture is from a trip I took in the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area, and
Okay.
the big leaf maples are just really
Wow.
amazing, and that leaf happened to be on the ground, and I was in this phase where I was like, let me compare the size of things to my head.
Okay.
Like, people know how big my head is, so I just lay down on the ground next to the leaf.
Hmm. Slow travel.
Yep.
Yep. You did this trip across America. You got all these adventures. You did a blog while you were riding.
Hmm.
Where did the information come from the book? Were you taking notes? Were you recording? What were you doing?
The blog was definitely an important source document. I also did not have all of the blog by the time I got to the end part of the book. So I had to use some other things to rely on. Weirdly, I have really a pretty vivid memory for some things. So, um, as I was writing, I did lean on the blog some, and thankfully I I don't delete emails, personal emails, and so I had a really nice record in my email from different people, and I had I had saved this box of material from my ride, kind of thinking that I would be doing something else with it, and it had receipts from places I stopped, which was also helpful. I had a Google map that I put pins on, and I still have that Google map. It had just a little bit of information um, on some of the different places that I stopped. And so, yeah, I drafted based on what I could remember. Maybe I pulled some stuff in from the blog until I got the whole manuscript done. And that's when I learned that maybe the blog wasn't all that helpful for me because my manuscript was enormous and I had to cut it in half.
Wow.
And yeah, and then it went through. I had to cut some more after the publisher looked at it, and then I added a little bit back, and it's kind of a little bit of a back and forth. But I also did some in some places. I did some research just to get a better handle on, for example, like which historic roads were in a particular area, or somebody recently asked me about the Supermax prison in Florence, Colorado, and I had done some research about that after the fact, but it was kind of in there seamlessly. Like I somehow knew about that. I knew about the prison while I was there, but yeah, some of that was came after the fact as part of the storytelling.
Storytelling. And now you're telling more stories. Did you ever get the degree?
I did get the degree,
Okay.
yes, um, and the job didn't exactly show up in the way that I thought it would. So
Surprise.
I, yeah, out in the West, it was the recession had a very long lasting effect in the world of planning, and so I just had this series of temporary part time and limited duration jobs, but I was able to work in bicycle tourism in different places. I worked on a national wildlife refuge in Oklahoma for a little while, and in the Columbia River Gorge National Scenic Area, and in places around Portland, and kind of worked in different things like in tourism, in transportation and planning, kind of community um, community organizations. And of course, now I have a book, which is also, I think, an important part of what that ride was for me. It just took quite a while to show up.
I'm trying to think how many women I know, 35-year-old women I know, would get on a bike and ride across the country. Actually, I know quite a few, but it's not a large percentage of the population of the United States. Heidi, what's different about you that lets you do that? Talk to me about your parents. How did they bring you up that you could just say, okay, I'm on my bike, I'm going, and yes, it's dangerous, and yes, there's all kind of issues, but I'm going.
Well, I grew up in Wyoming, and I think having grown up in Wyoming has a lot to do with it, where it's such a harsh environment and so few people that it's really one of these places where you you realize you can't rely on other people, or you don't rely on other people. You're sort of, you know, you're on your own. How are you gonna survive? It seemed really a place that required a lot of rugged individualism, shall we say. And, I think that had both positive and negative effects and influences on me. And I think I also was just and am still like a very independent person. I'm not shy about going out and doing things on my own. It's kind of my preferred way of doing them. I do have a partner though. I like being with other people. It's not like I eschew community or companionship or anything like that. I just I'm not. I don't know. My fear factor maybe is really different than a lot of other people's around that. I'm not concerned about being a woman alone. I used to go mountain climbing before I got into cycling, and I would do solo adventures, and so I had other experiences, being out in the elements and learning, medical precautions or how to save yourself in an outdoor environment, or tend to other people who are injured. So I had a grasp also of some of the environmental threats that a person could encounter out on their own. And so I thought, wow, I'm on a road, I'm near people. um, there was, the cell service was not that great in 2010. So, the cell phone was kind of like the emergency call button, but also was prepared for the fact that it might not work when I needed it
Yeah.
to. Yeah.
That's, it gets back to that, what I said earlier. You look for good people and you look for the good in people and you find it, and
Yes.
that's what I was just hearing you go through about Wyoming and independence and all that kind of stuff is, yeah, you find the good people, and your book is really clear on that. Have you been doing on that in the book tour? Because we've got somewhere I've got a map of your travels over the last couple of days. Uh, yeah.
Yeah.
So you started up there in the the far west, and then
Yeah.
you came across the country, and now you're finishing up down in Texas in Austin.
Yeah. And this map is, I haven't updated this map since March, because slow traveling really changes how things unfold. But
Okay.
this is approximately what I did. Um, that green line, I didn't make it up into the New England area yet,
Okay.
and I also didn't make it to Madison or Minneapolis, that area yet. So, but roughly, I got to Washington D.C., and I spent some time in Ohio and Chicago and Omaha, and then I came down to Austin from Omaha. So
Okay.
um, yeah, so it's similar.
Did you do Ragbri?
I did go on Ragbri.
Okay.
I experienced Ragbri for sure. I did not stay the whole time. It wasn't exactly my cup of tea with all the people there, but
This
I
is
did
not
go
solo
experience.
touring. Yes.
No, yeah. Um, yeah, but it was definitely good to experience it, and I have certainly enjoyed meeting a lot of really wonderful people along the way. And some of them have been friends for a while, and other places, they're newer friends. Or like I've had this just synchronicity of like reaching out and then getting introduced to other people. And yeah, so definitely my social world has gotten much bigger from this book tour journey, and connecting with folks and sharing my story. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and it's like it's how we met John Zimmerman said, "Hey, you're coming to Austin. You really need to go riding with Preston." And that didn't work out for various reasons, but at least we get to talk, so that's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
So it's a
there'll
shame you
probably
didn't
be
get up.
another time.
Shame you didn't get up to New England during that time frame of early October. It would have been beautiful up there, I think.
Yeah, well, there's always next year.
Next
So,
fall, yeah.
yeah. Well, we'll see. I imagine I'm already working on um, trying to get to some places that next year that I wasn't able to get this year. So, um, I'm hopeful that I'll be able to get up there and see some people and some places. Like
In some
part
places,
of
yeah.
part of the journey is like, wow, I've never been to Maine before. I'd love to check it out.
So how many states now?
I have no idea. Like, how many states have I been to?
If you've been riding in, that's the question. You got to at least
Oh,
get on the bike and ride 5 miles. Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't counted.
Okay. That's that's not what you're looking at, right?
No, no, it's not actually. I think it would be fun actually to sort of go back and think about that, but yeah, that hasn't really been the the goal. There's been so many other things to pay
Hmm.
attention to that I haven't been paying attention to that very well.
Okay. Yeah, you can hear my engineer background coming out when I start counting the countries and the states. Yeah.
And you can hear my artist coming out. It's like, oh, that's not what it's about.
What? How many states? Well, all the ones I've been in. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well, and that's the
that's all right.
feel, and we talked about that when I first talked to you about that's the feel I get from the book. This is not a travelogue, you know. This is not a list of everywhere you went and how long it took you to get there and all the problems you had on the way and what the roads were like. This was this was a book about people that you met. This was a book about things you felt. This was a book about something else besides the travelogue, and that's what I think makes it so wonderful and memorable. And one of the things is here's your website, so it's a little self promoting, but here's praise for Heidi, and it goes on quite a bit. You got a lot of people on the list. So
Mhm.
yeah, and they're saying a lot of the same thing I'm saying is that it's not about the trip, it's about who you met and how you approach people. And I got a biggest kick out of the book. I'm so glad I picked it up to read it. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, when I try and give a digest about it, I think about the cover, and the cover has a big heart on it and a bicycle, and Heidi is on there. But it's a love story. It's a love letter to America. It's a love letter to the tender heart in each of us. It's figuring out how to get unstuck from I don't know, some darkness in our lives, or how to break out of those things. And yeah, it just I feel like it's about love. And I saw something recently that said that um, it was about another book, and it said this is a story about love, not happiness. And I feel like that also applies to this book too. That love is very powerful emotion and energy in the world, and it is also not necessarily like joy or sparkly, but that doesn't minimize the intensity or power of love, which feels very um, yeah, I don't know, love love kind of blankets all. So
Okay.
I think as you were talking too about how I find the good in people, I think it's just like I I have, you know, heart forward. I am this loving energy, and that loving energy finds other loving energy. But I would also say too that when I did this ride in 2010, I didn't have a consciousness about that. Um, what I could say that I was definitely was curious and interested, right? I was open to other people, which I think sometimes is maybe not the safest way to
Yeah.
approach the world, but it certainly is a very welcoming energy to
Mhm.
encounter. Um, yeah.
Well, and that, the name of the podcast is Celebrating Differences. And so the question I have to ask you is, you know, what is it that's different about you that you love, that you really enjoy, but it makes the world a better place for the rest of us?
Yeah, and I definitely think that, I, especially especially coming through COVID, um, I really concentrated on this idea of love and putting love out into the world and loving all things, like the creepy crawlies on the ground, other people, people who see things differently than me, just really like, how do I connect with people at the level of the heart? I know other people do this too, but I feel like that's what I come with. And I'm not sure how to articulate this exactly, but I've also been very, very interested for a long time in, for lack of a better word, equity. How, and so that's why slow travel, I've been thinking about slow
Mm-hmm.
travel the way I have. Like, how can anyone, regardless of their abilities or other limiting factors, how can they experience the transformative nature of the outdoors? How do they have access to places where they can have these life-changing experiences? And and I don't know, like, I don't know exactly where that comes from in me. You know, Partly probably growing up in Wyoming, in this place where there really weren't very many people, um, gave me a sense of, like, when I went to college, like, that people had no frame of reference for understanding what what it would be like living in a place where there's just hardly any people
It's
in it.
nobody. Yeah.
Yeah. And uh, and I think being um, a little sister to a big brother also is part of that. I'm sure there's just something about who I am. I don't know where it comes from. Like, when I'm riding with my partner in the car, he has a very specific way that he likes to drive, and other people on the road usually are not aware of how he likes to drive, and so they're like in his way, and I'm always there either thinking or saying, like, well, I can see that they're anticipating, they want to make a left turn there, so that's why they're doing that. I'm just, sometimes I don't say those things in that situation, but
Mm-hmm.
it's always like, I'm always thinking, like, I can see the other person's perspective in this situation, or I can imagine a scenario where that person is doing what they see is the most right thing that they can do in that moment. I don't have to agree with it or not, but I can see how that could be true, or that could be the case, or that could be a want, or whatever it happens to be. So I have a lot of yeah, so I feel like I have a lot of capacity to care and empathize. And where does that come from? I
Well,
don't
and
know.
you said curious earlier, and that's
Yes.
we have a nonprofit called WAAO that stands for We Are All One, and the vision is that you are one, you are special, you are unique. There's nobody like you in the world, but you're part of the whole, and the whole wouldn't be the same without you. And you've got a lot to teach us, as long as we can be curious. if we're
Hmm.
judgmental and say, you crazy person, you got on a bike and rode across the country by yourself, what are you, insane? Or I can say, wow, wonder what it took to do that. What was the mindset that it took? What was the physical preparation? What kind of things, how did she choose a bike? And so there is a curiosity. And I saw a clip with Ted Lasso recently where he says it's curiosity, not judgment.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I think that's a lot of, and I'm not going to get into a discussion of political statement right now, but that's a lot of where we are right now. We're in the judgment, not curiosity world. And that
Hmm.
scares me a little bit. The curiosity, not judgment, seems to be a much better way to approach it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think also when we're very, I think this is one of the things that slow travel can help with also when we're very present. Um, uh, like some of that other stuff, like the level of ideology maybe doesn't apply um, in a moment where you're being really present with somebody, where you're connecting, on like, like at the level of the grass.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Like you're really grounded and down to earth, or you're just not, I don't know, it's a pure connection. It's a more human connection, and I think that's also one of the beautiful things about um, traveling in ways that expose you to the environment and other people, where you're walking or biking or paddling or whatever else. Like there's something, the inputs you get are
Mm-hmm.
wonderful and restorative, but it also makes you very receptive. Like, I don't know, you probably get this too, but I don't know how many times I'm out. It happened to me here in Austin. I am not from Austin, like somebody asked me for directions. I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
know. Like, I can't even find where I'm going right now, but I find that all the time. Like people ask me for directions, they'll lean out of their cars or whatever else. Anyway, yes. So
Yeah.
there's that permeability of being out in the environment. It makes us accessible. It makes us receptive. And I think it makes us or it's nourishing, right? And so then we send off these other signals. And humans must have pheromones, but we have no
Oh yeah.
idea how to respond to them, right? Where, they're like, oh, I just caught the whiff of that person. Like they're, oh, yeah, they're, they know. They're like, they've been soaking in the outdoors. They have that air about them. Yeah, we
Yeah.
can have a
That's
conversation.
Yeah, I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to walk around our neighborhood because we have in 711 acres we have 140 acres of green space.
Wow.
So then so every kid has got a park of some sort within 2 blocks of his house, and we have some major parks, and and we're pushing very hard to get where you're talking about. Let's be able to walk out, sit down, and there are birds, there are ducks, there are geese, there are, blackbirds, there are grackles. We have a pair of egrets, we have great blue herons. You said, wow, and fish, and it just, yeah, and it's right here in a major metropolitan area. We're less than 5 miles from the capital. So
That's
it's
amazing.
it's just you, you had an old airport. What are you going to do with it? And you create this oasis, and it's a large city all to itself. We're going to end up with almost 20,000 population and almost that many jobs in this 711 acres. And
That's so cool.
they just did an amazing job, and it's one of the best bike facilities in the nation. People talk about it all over the country, and they planned it that way. Started 20 years ago, and here we are finishing up. Yeah. So,
That's incredible.
and we are also one of the most diverse neighborhoods in Austin, because And I say that, and people say, "Oh well, it's mostly white." Yeah, well, it's still the most diverse neighborhood in Austin because most neighborhoods will have Latina and black, or white and Latino, or black and white, or that, and we've got white and everything.
Hmm.
And so, just in the condo I live in, it just there's people from all over the world are right here in the building, and it's got to be good for the kids. It's got
Hmm.
to be good for the children to go to school that way.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yeah.
if you can
Beautiful.
keep your sense of curiosity, yeah. So what one thing haven't we talked about, Heidi?
One thing haven't we talked about?
What's important to you, Heidi?
Uh, uh, Goodness.
Well,
Um,
you've been talking about it a lot. You've really been
yeah.
talking about the being with the world, being open to your surroundings, being open to all that, and that's I find that so delightful and refreshing. And I'm just so pleased that we did get a chance to get together. But is there anything else that we really haven't talked about that you said, "Oops, I forgot. I really would like to."
Well, yes, I have this. Um, so, in addition to being creative, well, in addition to being curious, I am also
Ah,
creative,
okay.
and so one of the things that I do think is like important part of slow travel is having the opportunity to integrate the experience through creativity. And I think that can be kind of a scary thing for some people who are like, "Oh, I'm not creative. Like that's not me. I don't want to go there." But um, I also encourage people to think about the many ways there are to be creative, right? You can be visually creative by making art. You can write. You can make music. You can move your body, right? You can dance. You can cook. You can sculpt. You can, I don't know, like put your hands in the dirt too. Like gardening, I feel like is a really creative thing. So um, I think it's important after having a slow travel experience to give yourself an opportunity to reflect and integrate the experience. And it doesn't have to be like a literal integration, but to tap into, you know, that, for lack of a better word, like play, that sense of play. Um,
Yes, yes.
So just finding the ways that we can kind of come back to like the child, the child within us, and that's why I think art is, creativity is a good way to do that because children are very
Hmm.
uninhibited around, um, their creative outputs, and they don't judge them either, and that's what I'm talking about. Um, So, yeah, this it feels nourishing for the soul, and I think as we age, a lot of times we wonder, oh, what am I gonna do? I've been around a number of people who are getting ready to retire or have recently retired, and some of them are very challenged around. I don't know what I would do if I
Yep.
wasn't doing this work or this other thing, which is part of why I think it's also good to cultivate your inner child, your sense of play,
Hmm.
your finding what feels creative for you, because those are the things that are very nourishing to your soul for the long term, and um, getting getting started earlier makes that an easier process. And I don't actually have an answer for, what should I do when I retire, or what should I do when I grow up. I'm still asking that question of myself, like, what am I going to be when I grow up? And I, I don't have to worry about that question. Like all I have to do is just tap into
Just
my
keep going.
creativity, and
Yeah.
I live it. So
So
uh,
you don't have exactly what would be thought of as a traditional career path.
absolutely not.
Not. Yeah, I'd love to look back on my multiple careers and say, how did you do that? I just did the next best thing,
Hmm. Yes.
and it's something we need to teach our kids. It's not what are you going to be when you grow up. Oh God, don't ask that question. Uh,
Right.
you know, let them get there. Let them get there, and hopefully you never grow up. I recently got a job uh, playing with kids and
Congratulations.
bikes. There's one of the best bike companies in the world's headquartered, U.S. headquarters here in Austin, the WAAO Bikes, and because of my background in bicycling, we got together and they offered me a job. And what I get to do is take bikes and kids and go out and play in the parking lots and the fields with kids and bikes. I mean, come on. They pay me for that?
Right.
And so let's, whatever it is, let's just keep not growing up. Let's keep being
Yes.
childlike at times.
Yes.
So,
And we can have our map and color in the states when
yep,
we've pedaled
yep,
5 miles in them.
yeah. And I've done that, yes. And the countries are fun. I used to work internationally. I was marketing director for a product for the world, so I traveled a lot. And I figured just if I'm going to take this opportunity, everywhere I got somewhere, I said, get me a bike. I've got to go riding. And so, yeah, I've ridden in a lot of interesting places. Yeah.
That's so
So,
cool.
thank you so much, Heidi. This has been so much fun. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to just ride around a little bit and, look at leaves and see what kind of birds are out on the lake today.
We will do it next time.
We will,
It
we
will.
will, we will plan on doing it again, and I hope to meet you somewhere else, maybe. As
Oh,
we cross somewhere out there in the world, trying to learn more about our world.
yeah. I love
Okay.
that. So beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It's just
This,
really,
this is
really a
fun.
delight. Yes,
The
to
the
have
last
this.
person I had was Charlie Gandy, and I don't know if you know that name, but Charlie is creating a 1,500-mile hike, bike, and equestrian trail across Texas. So this
Oh,
trail is almost all gravel, and he is slowly pinning the pieces together to go all the way across Texas. And you think 1,500 miles? Wait a minute, Texas is that big, that you can do that. And it's he's having fun, and that was my last podcast. So this is a good follow up, really nice follow up.
excellent. Go Charlie. Thanks for making places for people to get out and slow travel.
Oh yeah, and that's why it was so great to talk to you after talking to Charlie because that's what he's creating, and he's doing it with Bike Texas,
Oh,
as it's
fun.
helping, but it's going to be amazing when it gets finished. So
All right.
you'll have to come
Great.
back and ride.
Of
Yeah,
course.
you bet. All right, take care, Heidi.
All right. Thank you
Really
so much,
appreciate
Preston.
it. Yeah, bye bye. So that ends episode 103 with the very interesting Heidi Beierle and her trip across the country by bike when she was 35. It's fun to listen to her talk about curiosity and the whole vision of celebrating differences because she's got it. She understands. And it's not just people, it's the world, it's our whole environment. So thank you, Heidi. Please, folks, click the buttons down below, subscribe, say you like this, and we'll keep bringing these to you. Take care.